Hey, Aaron, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brian. About 15 years ago, I received my MBA in marketing. It was something that I kind of fought for a long time because I was always like a very creative person from college up until that point. And I had kind of very um, unfulfilling jobs for many years in like sales capacity and marketing. And I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, maybe I'm interested in business. Let's take this to the next level. So I got my MBA, and then my first job after my MBA, this is about 2009, I was working at this very small software company for business intelligence. And because we were so small and there wasn't really structure around the sales team, we were really like the first couple of salespeople there. I was like a BDR, I was an AE, I was a solutions consultant, I was a marketing manager, basically had my hands into all these things and was really just grinding it out and grinding and grinding. And I started really enjoying software and really just being able to put myself out there in front of customers in a very different way than what I was used to. And it just became really enjoyable and fun. And then after about 3 years of being there, it almost kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth because of, some of the challenges of just being a small company that was really unable to grow as fast as I would have liked, or kind of, wanted to do something a little bit different. So I went and was doing other types of selling for like consumer products and manufacturing merchandise. And that was a lot of fun. And eventually, a little bit after that, all roads lead back to software sales, I guess, at least in my view, right? So I ended up just randomly being connected to somebody that works for a software company. And I'm like, you know what, this is actually something that I really want to get back into doing. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years, and I love it. And it's just such a really cool experience. And I think it's just a great part of sales in general, like the software world, because it's just so vast and growing.
And you've had a pretty tremendous track record.
I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. I mean, it didn't start that way, and I'm sure this is
It
true
didn't
for
start that way.
for
It
many
rarely
people.
does.
Well, I mean, I think day one going into a new company, right? I
Oh,
think,
anything. Yeah.
yeah, it really doesn't matter what you've done in the past, who you are, what your education is. It's like, is this person going to be someone that's going to bring results,
Yeah.
right? And nobody really knows. And that's like kind of the million-dollar question. It's like, what's the makeup of somebody who's successful? But, I spent the first year and a half just grinding, grinding, grinding. And at some point it just like clicked. And I've been very fortunate, and I feel like I've really grown as a person and as a salesperson over the last few years, kind of just organically.
And
And it's just really been fun.
what caused the clicking? Was it just osmosis or was it an
Um,
epiphany?
yeah, yeah, I mean, I think to I think bringing in a business development focus to any sales role and not expecting somebody's going to go out and hunt for you is extremely beneficial. And I kind
Right.
of picked that up in that first software sales job that I had. I kind of cut my teeth doing that. And I brought that mentality into this role. So being able to just grind it out for a long period of time is not necessarily something that a lot of people would be willing to do, because it takes a toll mentally, rejection after
I've
rejection.
heard.
I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about salespeople. It's like, I mean, you just like I kind of laugh at this to myself. It's like you have to be kind of psychotic and crazy in a way to be able to go and swim against the stream like that. But
Every day.
yeah, and I I basically just like checked my ego at the door, and I was like, you know what? I'm not doing very well right now, but I'm gonna keep grinding and grinding and grinding, and I have to just keep at it. And even when it started clicking a little bit, it wasn't like 0 to 100, right?
Small.
But I think it's not about like learning the product, because this is like a thing for me. It's like I kind of just knew, like, who cares about what the product does? Like, I'm not going to spend my time trying to figure out what the product does, or what's involved with the function and the industry and all these little nuances. Like, there's got to be more of a focus going deeper into like, how am I going to get these people to like see a problem that they might not know that they have, and get them to see something that they haven't really looked at before, right? And so I take myself out of that equation, right? And then I just kind of followed that process and kept just trying to learn. And then the mental, like, the mental part of like competing kind of just took over at some point, where I just wanted to be successful so bad, and I was really willing to do anything. And once I started tasting a little bit of that success, it just kind of snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. And just to be able to earn that success, it's like I'm at a level now where I think I know how to repeat that. And then you learn more, and then like, okay, I know how to repeat this level and this level and this level. And then it got to a point where I'm like doing pretty well. And and then it kind of changes you as a person. And it's like I'm a completely different person, like not even just like a salesperson, but just like a human being, just in
Yeah.
terms of success. And I would imagine that's true not just for sales, but for anything. Like when you put that much focus and effort, and you're fortunate if you start doing well in something, I think you just try to be humble about it. But
Plus, you're not selling to easy people either, are you?
no, it's never easy. And that's the funny thing. I think about this, like when I was working at a software company selling into like sales and marketing, like salespeople are like the most neurotic people in general, right? I'm making these bold statements, but we're just incredible buyers. Like I just think salespeople, like we just like impulsively, I'll buy this. Yeah, I'll buy this. So early on when I was doing that, I was selling to like VP of sales and selling the market intelligence. And it was fortunate the product wasn't a significant investment for them. There was an entry point. And yeah, I mean, it was a little bit easier. And then when you sell to different functions, like what I'm selling right now, whoo, because of the people that you're selling to also they're they're not used to like getting nice things in a way, right? They deserve those things, but you have to really show them that there's a better way to do things, and that they deserve it, and that their lives are going to be made better because of it.
And they're not the social butterflies of the business world, are they?
Right, right. The unsung heroes, though, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you sell to sales and marketing, I mean, they communicate.
Right,
You're more on the finance side, right? Is that
right.
true? Okay.
Sure, correct. Yes,
They're,
right.
they're a little close. They're not just, if you go to a party, they're not the ones with the light lampshade on their head, right?
Right, right. I mean, it's definitely possible for that personality type to show up,
Yeah.
right? Although I've been really impressed with the people that I've met over the last few years, because there are people that are extremely articulate and outgoing, and you can look at these certain types of people with those traits. You can kind of recognize those traits in maybe certain types of successful salespeople, but when you recognize them in other parts of the business, it's like, well, that person is somebody that could be on a CFO track, or that person could be like a CEO one day, but have that strong finance background. And that's what's really interesting about this position too, is because you meet so many unique type of people. So
And
yeah,
that's the personality or the person that you want to be talking to, right? Because they're
it,
climbing.
exactly. And that's it. It's like for any type of software sales, I would imagine you have to find your champion, right?
Yes.
And that's a person who you can coach into seeing a vision. But I think, like you're saying, if you find those people, and it's not about just like being smart or not being smart, it's about somebody who is maybe looking at this more strategically versus
Yes.
tactical, and then they see that vision, right? It's bigger than them. It's bigger than just themselves and their own needs. Like it's not just what's good for me, it's what's good
The
for
business.
everybody, what's good for the business, what's going to help everybody, right? And those people can recognize the need for change.
Uh, Because somebody has to stand up, right? And run the gauntlet of getting your product into their company. It's not just the
Exactly.
money, it's the change.
Right. Right. Right.
And they're already doing it a certain way, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah, we've been doing this for 25 years. It's like, why change and why change now?
Yeah. They're not going to do it because it's, 10% cheaper or 20% faster or better. It's got to
Right.
be a lot.
Right. It's got to be a lot and it has to have meaningful impact.
And during that first year, what did you change about your approach that kind of helped you connect with them?
So, um, when I started going through like sales processes for the first year, very much process oriented in terms of like, here's your first call. Okay, then you do the demonstration, and then we're going to do a pricing call, and then we're going to, close the deal or, have this type of
Sure.
call, right? It's like A through Z. And then I'm having not very much experience. You speak with somebody and it's on that first call and it's like, well, tell me about your challenges, right? And they're saying like all of these things, but when I look back on what they were saying, those things were very superficial, very tactical, right?
Yeah.
And the weaknesses in me at the time were really just kind of the way I look at this is like superficial selling, where I was just kind of gliding from step to step. And I wasn't creating any depth in the sales cycle. I wasn't tapping into the reasons behind it, right? And then you go through all these steps and you're like, oh my God, this is going great. We just did the demo and now they want to do the pricing call. And then you're blindsided nonstop, right? By left and right. It's like, oh, sorry that we're not able to do this because of XYZ. And you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming, right? Because
Right.
you
And
just have that
XYZ is kind of
inexperience.
made up.
Yeah, it's made up, but when I look at it now, I'm I think one of the things that I think is really exciting is like I was afraid to talk about the things that I was afraid to talk about bad things. I was afraid to talk about failure. And I was afraid to address real concerns that people might had. And maybe that was subconscious, but now it's like you want to find the reasons why this is not going to work or why they don't think that what you're offering is the best fit for them. And you want to find it out immediately. And I didn't do that because I was kind of just gliding along, not realizing that there wasn't really compelling reasons why they would do it, and it wasn't being brought to the surface because there wasn't enough depth in the sales cycle.
And how did you get to those compelling reasons? Was it reading the situation? Was it questions? Was it rapport building?
I
All of
think,
that?
yeah, I think it's all of that. I mean, I think what I started realizing, I mean, I always kind of knew it's not about me. I'm just here as a facilitator. I'm just essentially like a project manager. I bring in all these people who are extremely knowledgeable and intelligent and who can really help build the value, right? But I kind of believe in this thing where it's like push versus pull. And I think a lot of mistakes that I may have made early on, and maybe other salespeople make, is you think like sales is a certain type of thing and you're just going through motions, but you're constantly pushing. Like salespeople can talk, we can talk all day long, right? We're just pushing, pushing, pushing. My product is great. Let me tell you about these things. If I talk a lot and I sound articulate, I could talk you into buying anything, right?
Yep.
And then at some point, I started realizing I need to be able to pull. I need to start pulling the relevant information out of these people, pulling the emotional, psychological elements of the deal of the human being that I'm working with, and just stop talking so much, right? And and realize that you could be talking for 5 minutes on a 30-minute call and have an incredible more impact than talking for 25 minutes on a 30-minute call, right? So it's when you sit back and like once I started doing that, I started realizing that it was so much easier to like focus in on what was really going on, starting to be able to connect the dots and being much more of an observer. And then it was like, let's put this together and okay, and now I'm going to ask this question. okay, now I'm going to bring this out. And then really, then I was able to start like looking at it from like chess versus checkers. Like, are you, we're not just going from, intro to demo to pricing. Now we're playing a very different type of game where I'm able to look 2 steps ahead or 3 steps ahead. And then knowing what that's going to be in 3 steps, I can ask questions right now or talk about certain things that what I think are going to happen. So I'm not going to waste that time, but also I'm trying to mitigate the risk that this is going to happen because I think it could happen. So I'm going to like proactively be able to navigate through that.
Did you find a pattern of what was the real problem that you solved for the individual?
Are you talking about just in terms of like what the product can offer?
Well, you know, I'm guessing about your sale. I've never sold to finance. I'm purely guessing as an observer that
Sure.
in the first scenario you shared what everybody does, motions and plays, but then they don't buy
Right.
because there's no, you said compelling reason
Sure.
or a huge personal win for somebody there.
Right.
Wh-
Yep.
What was it that you pulled out that created
Oh
the
yeah. I mean,
juice?
I see what you mean. So I apologize. So I think the juice is coming up with not like a return on your investment, like, oh, let's make sure that they see the return on investment, but it's like, oh, hey, we need visibility. It's like, oh my God, they need visibility. We can offer that. They can
We got
get
it.
visibility, right? So it's like, or we need to be able to do XYZ faster. Oh, they want to do it faster, right? I mean, and maybe for seasoned salespeople, these are the things that are very obvious once you start getting good at what you're doing. But at the time when I was starting off early on, it's like I wasn't finding the why continuously and saying, okay, well, why is that important? And then, okay, then, but why is that important? Why do you need to do this? And then, oh, because of we need to do it because of this. Well, why do you need to do that? And then, well, what does your CFO care about? Oh, she wants this. Oh, and then in the early on, oh, she wants it, right? She's on board. It's like, well, no, why does she want it? What does that mean for, oh, because she wants it because of this. Well, why does she want it because of that? And I'm this is a very like simplistic way of saying all this, this kind of childish like back and
Wonderment,
forth, right?
curiosity.
But that's what I think ultimately led to me to success is like just as I was mentioning, like just being able to dig deep and like once they started talking and bringing things to the surface, it's like we have like all these, it's like becomes a much bigger thing to work
Tapestry of
with. It's
things.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, here's your canvas. And now how are we going to mold this down a little bit and create that business case and those compelling reasons? And then, if the magic is right, if it's a certain person that doesn't necessarily have the vision or like a great champion who can articulate that internally, you're getting them to see things that they wouldn't have already seen. And then now you can take it and make it a very clear business proposition or value proposition onto, okay, these are the things that you told me, and here's the detailed reasons why. And then now let's look at the functionality and the partnership, and this is what it's really going to allow you to do.
Yeah. And how big were these deals? Are they 5 figures, 6 figures, bigger?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ranges. Like
Yeah.
I serve small and mid-sized customers, so we're not talking about very long, very high ticket, ACVs. I'm in the volume business, and I have a short attention span, so I think it works well. Um, right? It's like, there's salespeople, and I respect this so much, but you have like very large enterprise and strategic that you could spend years working with people and very large engagements. And I just think that's incredible. And I just, I don't know if that's something that I would ever pursue. It's like a very different type of selling. Fundamentally, I think it's very similar, right? But yeah.
Well, because what you talked about seemed like it was very thorough, but when you go thorough, it's usually time consuming.
Right. And well, that's the trick. It's like, is
Do it fast.
how do I make it thorough, but like get them to make a decision quickly, right? We want a decision, a yes or no decision as quickly as possible, right? But did I miss anything? Well, how do I know I'm not going to miss anything? But do it very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a delicate art and science, like it's a delicate dance, and you have to try to create a process where you can efficiently go through it very quickly, but create a lot of depth.
Can you give us a sense of how long average? Is it 90 days, 120?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think 90 days is
That's pretty
very
fast.
could be pretty typical. It could be longer. The pain of selling too, as everybody knows, is like, how do you measure a real sales cycle if it goes beyond, 6 months and there's like starting and stopping, right?
Right.
It's like, how long is it really? So from an engagement perspective, yeah, I think 3 to 6 months is pretty typical.
And did they become competitive? Would they look at you and say, yeah, this is great. Let's look at everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and
They
and
did.
that's the thing that I I made some mistakes in the past, and one of the things that I think is really interesting from at least from my perspective, the way that I operated was any type of sales. You could have three competitors, four competitors in the mix, and the prospective client could come up with a requirements list on paper in Excel, right? And it's 30 different things, and the fool in me, like the inexperience, there's been a couple of times in the past where I look at that sheet and I'm like, we got this, right? We got this. And I think what's so exciting though about what we do is that there could be four or five companies that can say the same thing, right? But now that's where it becomes really interesting, and that's where the fun of this position comes in, at least for me, being able to, okay, so now you have four customers that can check off boxes. So now it's like, okay, prospective client, what's going to differentiate? And I've been in a position where I actually will say that. I've been very proactive, and I think that really helps too. And that's kind of like looking ahead, knowing like, oh, sorry, we're not picking you because of this reason. And it was a very much more emotionally, psychologically driven reason why they didn't pick you versus you were like the right person. It's like, I think you're just an amazing person, but I'm going to break up with you because I just don't think it's a good fit, for us. It's like, well, on paper, like I'm a catch, right? And I'm just using that metaphor because I
Yeah.
just think it's funny. But it's like the social rejection of relationships. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think so. That's something that I would give advice to pretty much anybody in sales. And I've talked to people internally about this too, that were more on the junior side starting off. It's like, that's great that we can check off those boxes of requirements, and these other companies are going to be able to check
The
off
same
those.
thing. Yeah.
So we have to really look past that, and we have to dive into the emotional and psychological elements here. Like, let's connect those dots and let's challenge them in a way where it's like, okay, yeah, the other vendors that you mentioned are going to be able to do that too,
Well,
right?
let's
Let's
talk
let's
about
address that.
the
Oh no, sorry, go ahead.
psychological and the emotional ones. What were those? I got to believe when you find somebody who's a mover, a climber,
Right.
you can connect with that. Is the emotion confidence that your product can do what you say? Is it
Well,
that you
so
understand them?
yeah, so let me see if I could try to paint like a sample scenario. So you have three different software choices. You're a buyer, right? They all check off the boxes on paper. So how are you going to decide, right? Maybe they're all saying that they can provide equal business impact to you. So now you start getting into more of the psychological, emotional things of it. Like, this these people that I'm working with, that I know are making the decision, what do they really care about? What are they really afraid of? Are like, is it they want something that is going to have these types of dashboards? Are they looking at this superficially? Are are what about them? What about their position? What about their career? What about how they're looking at this project? What is their relationship with the other C levels? So then you have to really start understanding like what are they afraid of? What are they latching onto? Right? It's like if you lose to that one of those three competitors for a reason that just doesn't seem substantiated, but maybe they were tapping into more of the emotional side of it, where they're articulating that if they went with them as a vendor, then they wouldn't have to do XYZ. Their path would they would have a lot less resistance, or maybe the way that they would implement would be very different. And maybe you didn't necessarily talk about that because you were worried about just checking off the boxes, but this person was really concerned about an implementation approach because they worked at a company before and they got burned, and you didn't know that.
Yeah.
You didn't dig enough. You didn't discover that. And that was maybe just a critical piece of information that if you would have found out, if you knew that, then you could have been proactive and know exactly how to frame it and connect the dots to make that person feel comfortable that that wasn't going to be a challenge if they worked with you.
You know, because I've kind of noticed that it usually goes by personal wins, where it's they like the user interface or they like the brand name, they like what it can do for their career, makes it getting the next job easier.
Mhm,
It's a credential.
mhm.
And I think you're onto it once you can figure that out, because it's not the requirements list.
Right,
Because I bet if you took that away from them and asked them to name five of them, they couldn't name them.
right. And then I think the kiss of death, unfortunately, for sales rep is hearing the letters RFP, right? Because that just, falls right in line with that.
You
But
know.
yeah, I think everything you're saying is very accurate. So it's just kind of interesting.
And what do you think your competition doesn't do well that you do really well?
Um, are you referring to like the actual
The actual
solution, or are you
sales
talking about
process,
the,
the
the
client interaction.
yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I knew exactly what their client interaction was like. I think any client interaction that is not really addressing a client's concerns on a deep and meaningful level, is really at a disadvantage. And um, and we could use that to our advantage, right? For what I do too. If you're proactive and you have like trap setting questions, or you challenge them in terms of like what they really care about. So it's hard for me to answer that because I don't really have access to that, but I would have to just guess, right? I'm competing against the unknown, This is
Right.
I love the sports metaphor of like what we do. The competing, and you're trying to win all the time, but you can only guess at what the other person is doing, or you find out directly from the people that you're talking to at that prospective client.
And now let's inverse it. Let's say you're not column A. You didn't get there first, but you either get the RFI, the RFP, or a phone call. Hey, Aaron, come in and show us what you got.
Right.
How do you displace the incumbent or redefine the playing field to your advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really separating solutions, right? It's like, hey, we're not first in the door. Um, you looked at this other vendor, you looked at these other vendors. I think that's great that you looked at them. And let's talk about what they do well, and let's talk about what we do. And I think you really try to separate yourself in terms of what you're offering and the impact that your solution is going to provide, right? And if you only care about the impact that those other solutions are offering, then I think you should really consider working with them. But if you really care about this, and this, then I think what we're going to talk about today is going to be extremely meaningful, right? So I take the high road. I think that if you do it well, you could really put your competitors at a disadvantage and really be direct about it without bashing them. Because ideally, look, we want to be consultants at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
If you do your job well, it's not about me. I could care less what they think about me. I want to be very knowledgeable. I want to be honest. I want to be able to like help them. But it's not about me. It's about getting them to see that our solution is going to be the best fit for them based on what I know to be true in terms of the business outcomes that we can provide. And if those align with what they're looking for, then that's when we really would, create some really great synergies.
And when a junior rep comes to you, what's your most common advice to kind of take them from where they are to where they want to go?
I think just be extremely direct, be very direct, very assertive. And I've mentored people, and I think a lot of the people that I've mentored are very articulate people. Um, I think a lot of times though, the the newness of being in sales creates an environment, and I went through this too, where you're almost afraid to dig deep, or you don't do it because of inexperience, right? I think being able to challenge prospective clients in a very respectful, professional way is extremely important. And I think that's hard for new reps to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. They have to feel very comfortable with that process of like how they're going to be able to do that.
It takes a certain kind of confidence, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ultimately gains respect though. But yes,
Oh,
it does it,
absolutely.
and the confidence comes with a little bit of practice, right? Um, but
Because
yeah, that's probably one of the main things I would say to people.
because in your sale, you described it, it's kind of that latent pain, that problem that they're unaware of.
Right,
And you have to ask hard questions. And I think at first people kind of sell like a service clerk, where they go up, they ask certain questions, qualification questions, give the demo or the presentation, the demo, and follow the process.
right,
But unless you ask the hard questions, you don't even know if it's a match.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'll give a quick story. So 2 or 3 years ago, I was on this very large remote demo, and they brought in the team in Europe to help make the decision. And this one woman made this comment very negative about what we do and maybe her experience using us before, right? And in that moment, I knew like I didn't know what I honestly didn't know what to do. Like I didn't challenge anything. I let her voice become the voice of the masses. And ultimately, we didn't win the deal. We lost. I mean, I lost the deal. I take credit for that. But fast forward, I've been in opportunities where that very same thing is happening. Maybe not the exact same scenario, but where somebody will come to me and say, well, your competitor is doing this, and I can do it like that. I don't have to do this. And those are the moments that I just love, because, that's when I start going back to those conversations where you can really separate what you do and what they do and really challenge them. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Let's step back for 1 second. When we last spoke, you mentioned that you were trying to do X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Now, this is what they do, and this is what we do. These are very two different types of solutions with two different types of outcomes. So and then that's when I just became very proactive and very, very direct, because in that moment you have those are the moments where the experience will allow you to be able to do that, but just also the recognition that this is my moment to win or lose the deal. It's right now. Like
Yes.
this is,
Yes.
it's like
It is,
a
whether
lot
you
of times you could,
believe
a
it or
lot of
not,
times,
it is.
yeah, I mean, those are, and that's what's really fun about what we do sometimes, because you get in these moments where you have the ability to really get those people to see something that they didn't see, or challenge them based on what they just said 3 days before on a previous phone call,
Yeah.
right? So, that I think that comes with just a little bit more practice and experience for people that are starting off. But you just when you let things fester underneath the surface, they always come back and bite you later. So I mean that's really the science and the art of this is try to like pull all of that stuff up to the surface, be able to have conversations about it early, and then you could figure out how you're going to navigate through.
Great. Hey, Aaron, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'm really not doing this for recognition, but I'm
Okay.
on LinkedIn. If anybody else wants to connect, I'd love to connect with anybody.